The ship shook as weapons fire struck the shields. Tay grabbed onto a railing to keep from falling. All around him, Velen soldiers were running, shouting orders, preparing for the worst. The sound of alarms filled the air like a screaming wind. On the main screen, the Dominion fleet was advancing. Their black ships moved with terrible precision, forming patterns that cut off every possible escape route. There were too many of them. Far too many. Shields at 60%, an officer reported. We cannot survive much longer under this barrage. Nara stood at the center of the control room, her expression calm even as everything fell apart around her. She was giving orders, directing the defense, refusing to show fear. Tay watched her and felt something strange. Pride. He was proud to know someone like her. What about the other Velen ships? Nara asked. Where is our fleet? Too far away, Princess. They cannot reach us in time. Another hit. The whole ship groaned like a wounded animal. Sparks flew from damaged panels. Someone screamed from somewhere down the corridor. Tay stepped forward. He did not know what he could do. He was not a soldier. He was not a leader. He was just a cargo pilot who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. But standing here and doing nothing felt wrong. There has to be something, he said. Some way to fight back. Some way to survive. Nara looked at him with tired eyes. The Dominion has been building their power for 100,000 years. We have been free for only 3 centuries. They have always been stronger. They have always known we could not truly resist them. Today, they prove it. Then why fight at all? Why not just give me to them? Nara's expression hardened. Because some things are worth dying for. Honor. Loyalty. Doing what is right even when it costs everything. These are the lessons your ancestors taught us. We will not betray those lessons now. More fire struck the ship. The shields dropped to 40%. Then 30. Tay closed his eyes. He thought about his message, flying through space toward Earth. Would anyone ever hear it? Would anyone ever know what happened here? Would the truth about humanity die with him in the cold darkness between stars? No. He refused to accept that. He opened his eyes. An idea was forming in his mind. A desperate, stupid, probably impossible idea. The communication device, he said. Can it reach more than just human space? Can it send signals in all directions? Nara frowned. Yes, why? When the humans saved your people, they did not do it alone. You said they helped other species too. The Morvani, the Centauri, others. Those species are still out there, right? They still remember? Understanding began to dawn on Nara's face. Yes, many of them are still out there. Many of them still tell the stories. Then send a message. Send it everywhere. Tell them what is happening. Tell them that a human has returned and the Dominion is trying to kill him. Tell them that the Velen are standing alone against an empire to protect the legacy of the Guardians. Nara stared at him. You think they will come? You think they will risk war with the Dominion for one human? Tay shook his head. I do not know. But the humans 300 years ago did not know if their help would matter either. They did it anyway. Maybe there are others out there who remember that. Maybe there are others who want to be heroes too. For a long moment, Nara said nothing. The ship shook again. The shields dropped to 20%. Time was running out. Then she smiled. It was a fierce smile, full of teeth and fire and hope. You really are like them, she said. You really are one of the Guardians. She turned to her officers. Open all communication channels. Send a distress call on every frequency. Tell the galaxy what is happening here. Tell them the humans have returned and they need help. The officers worked quickly. Within moments, a signal was broadcasting in all directions. Tay's message from before had only gone to human space. This message went everywhere. To every planet, every ship, every species that might be listening. The Dominion noticed immediately. Their attacks became more fierce. They knew what the Velen were trying to do, and they wanted to stop it before help could arrive. The shields failed. Enemy fire began striking the hull directly. Parts of the ship started to burn. Smoke filled the corridors. The screaming grew louder. Tay held onto the railing and watched the main screen. The Dominion ships were so close now that he could see details on their hulls. They were preparing boarding craft. They would be inside soon. And then it would be over. Nara stood beside him, her hand finding his. They faced the screen together, waiting for the end. Then something changed. A new signal appeared on the sensors. Then another. Then dozens. Ships were arriving. Ships from every direction. Ships of different sizes and shapes and designs, emerging from faster-than-light travel like stars being born. What is happening? Nara whispered. The communication officer's voice was shaking. Princess, we are receiving transmissions. Many transmissions. They are identifying themselves as allies. They are saying they remember the Guardians. They are saying they will not let the Dominion destroy their memory. On the screen, the new ships began engaging the Dominion fleet. It was chaos. Beautiful, wonderful chaos. Vessels Tay did not recognize were fighting side by side with Velen support ships that had somehow arrived early. The Dominion formation broke apart as attacks came from every angle. Nara laughed. It was a sound of pure joy, of relief so powerful it was almost painful. They came, she said. They actually came. Tay watched the battle turn. The Dominion ships, so confident and unstoppable moments ago, were now retreating. They had not expected resistance from half the galaxy. They had thought the memory of humans was forgotten. They had been wrong. Hours later, when the last Dominion ship had fled and the damaged Velen vessel was surrounded by new allies, Tay stood in the main chamber once again. But this time, he was not alone on his knees. This time, he stood beside Princess Nara as representatives from a dozen species gathered before them. They were all different. Some were tall and thin. Some were short and round. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had features Tay could not even describe. But they all had one thing in common. They all remembered. One by one, they stepped forward and told their stories. How humans had helped their ancestors. How the Guardians had appeared in their darkest moments and offered hope without asking for anything in return. How the legends had been passed down through generations, waiting for this day. We thought you were gone, a representative from the Morvani said. We thought we would never see your kind again. But you are here. You are real, and we will stand with you. The humans gave us everything, said another, from a species Tay did not recognize. Now we can begin to repay that debt. Tay listened to all of this in amazement. His simple cargo pilot life seemed like a distant dream now. Everything had changed. Everything was different. When the representatives finished speaking, Nara stepped forward. She raised her hand for silence, and the chamber grew quiet. Today marks a new beginning, she said. For 300 years, the galaxy has been divided, fearful, ruled by powers that cared only about themselves. But the humans showed us a different way. They showed us that kindness is strength, that helping others is the highest purpose any being can have. She turned to look at Tay. Her silver eyes were bright with emotion. One human has returned. One human has reminded us who we can be. And now we must decide. Will we go back to the old ways? Will we continue to fight and compete and destroy? Or will we build something better? Something worthy of the Guardians who saved us? The chamber erupted in cheers. Hands and claws and other appendages rose in support. The noise was deafening, overwhelming, incredible. Nara took Tay's hand and raised it high. The Alliance of Guardians begins today, she announced, and humanity will lead us. Tay looked at her. I cannot lead anyone. I'm just a cargo pilot, Nara smiled. The first Guardians were just explorers. Just ordinary people who decided to be extraordinary. That is all anyone can ever be. And that is enough. She lowered their hands and stepped closer. Your people are out there, Tay. Earth is out there. The colonies are out there. When they receive your message, they will know the truth. And when they come to join us, we will welcome them as heroes. Tay thought about his mother, his friends, all the ordinary people living their ordinary lives, not knowing that they were the descendants of legends. Soon they would know. Soon everything would change. What happens now? Yes, Nara looked around the chamber at the gathered representatives, at the ships visible through the windows, at the galaxy that waited for them. Now we build, she said. We build an alliance that will protect the innocent and stand against tyranny. We build a future where kindness is valued more than power. We build what the humans started 300 years ago. She turned back to him with a grin. And we show the universe that humanity is back. For good this time. Tay smiled. He was tired and confused and still not entirely sure any of this was real. But for the first time in his life, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The stars outside the window seemed brighter than before. The galaxy seemed smaller. And the future, which had seemed so dark just days ago, was suddenly full of light. He was a cargo pilot. He was a nobody from a small colony. And he was going to help change everything. His ancestors would have been proud. The communication room was filled with technology Tay did not understand. Strange machines hummed and clicked. Lights blinked in patterns that seemed random, but probably meant something important. At the center of everything was a large screen, dark and waiting. This device can send messages across the galaxy, Nara explained. It will take some time for your signal to reach human space, but it will get there. The question is, what will you say? Tay had been thinking about this for hours. How do you tell an entire species that everything they believe about themselves is wrong? How do you explain that their ancestors were galactic heroes who saved civilizations and then vanished without a trace? I do not know, he admitted. They might not believe me. They might think I have gone crazy. Nara placed a hand on his shoulder. Then show them proof. Send them the records we have. Send them the images and the texts. Let them see the truth with their own eyes. The keepers had given Nara copies of everything. Digital versions of the ancient books, recordings of the legends, images of the old human ships and the people who had flown them. It was enough proof to convince anyone who was willing to listen. But would humans listen? Tay thought about the people he knew. His mother, who worked in a factory making parts for machines. His friends, who spent their days playing games and complaining about their jobs. They were ordinary people living ordinary lives. Would they even care about events that happened 300 years ago? Then he thought about something else. The ships in the old images. The simple suits. The determined faces. Those ancient humans had not been special either. They had been ordinary people who chose to do extraordinary things. Maybe that was the point. I will do it, Tay said. But I want to send more than just records. I want to send a message. Something personal. Nara nodded. Whatever you need. She helped him set up the communication device. It took time to figure out the controls, but eventually Tay was ready. He sat in front of the screen, took a deep breath, and started speaking. My name is Tay. I am a human. A few days ago, I was dying alone in space, waiting for the end. Then I was rescued by an alien ship, by a people called the Velen. What I learned here has changed everything. I thought I knew about who we are. He talked for almost an hour. He told them about the ancient humans who had saved the Velen. He told them about the other species that had been helped, the legends that had spread across the galaxy, the reputation that humanity had earned and then lost. He told them about the theories of what had happened, the possibilities of hidden enemies, the dangers that might still exist. And then he told them something else. Something he had been thinking about since his conversation with the keepers. I know this sounds impossible. I know it sounds like a story someone made up. But I have seen the proof. I have held objects that belonged to our ancestors. I have spoken with beings who remember them. This is real. All of it is real. He paused, gathering his thoughts. For as long as I can remember, humans have thought of themselves as small, unimportant, new to the galaxy, with nothing to offer except our labor and our resources. We have always looked up at the stars and felt afraid of what might be out there. But we were wrong. We were so wrong. His voice grew stronger. Our ancestors traveled across the galaxy, helping anyone who needed it. They asked for nothing in return. They simply saw suffering and decided to end it. They were not soldiers or conquerors. They were caretakers, guardians. They were the best of what humanity could be. He looked directly into the recording device, imagining the millions of faces that might see this message. I do not know why we forgot. I do not know why none of this is in our history. But I know that the truth cannot stay buried forever. We need to remember who we were. We need to become those people again. The galaxy is watching. The galaxy is waiting. And I believe we can show them that humans are still worth believing in. He ended the recording and sat back, exhausted. His heart was pounding. His hands were shaking. He had just sent a message that might change the entire course of human history, or it might be ignored completely. Nara was standing behind him. She had listened to every word without interrupting. Now she stepped forward and sat beside him. "That was brave," she said, "or stupid. Sometimes those are the same thing." She smiled slightly. The humans I read about in the old texts, they were brave in the same way. They did not know if their actions would matter. They just did what they thought was right and hoped for the best. Tay looked at her. In the soft light of the communication room, she seemed almost human herself. Her features were different. Her skin was the wrong color, but her expression was familiar. It was the expression of someone who cared. "Can I ask you something?" He said, "Of course. Why do you care so much?" "About humans, I mean. Your people were saved 300 years ago. That is ancient history. Why does it matter to you?" Nara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. "When I was young, my mother told me stories about the humans. She told me about their kindness, their courage, their refusal to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. I grew up believing that beings like that existed somewhere in the universe. It gave me hope." She looked at her hands. "Then I became older. I learned about the galaxy as it really is. The wars, the cruelty, the endless competition for power and resources. I saw species destroy each other over things that did not matter. I saw empires crush entire worlds because they could. And I started to wonder if the stories were true. If humans had ever really existed, or if they were just myths we told ourselves to feel better about our own failures." She looked up at Tay. Her silver eyes were bright with emotion. "When I saw you in that chamber, when I realized what you were, it was like the stories had come to life. Proof that goodness could exist. Proof that kindness was real. You cannot imagine what that meant to me." Tay did not know what to say. He had spent his whole life thinking of himself as nobody special. A cargo pilot. A small person in a big universe. And here was an alien princess telling him that his very existence gave her hope. "I am just one person," he said. "I cannot fix the galaxy." "No," Nara agreed. "But you are not alone. There are billions of humans. If even a fraction of them are like you, if even a fraction of them carry the same spirit as your ancestors, then the galaxy might have a chance. Before Tay could respond, alarms started ringing. Red lights flashed across the room. Nara jumped to her feet, her expression changing from soft to sharp in an instant. What is happening? Tay asked. Nara was already moving toward the door. Someone is coming. Ships approaching at high speed. Many ships. She ran out of the room, and Tay followed. They rushed through the corridors to the main control center, where dozens of Velen were working frantically at their stations. The main screen showed the space around the ship, and what Tay saw made his blood run cold. Ships. Hundreds of them. Black and angular and covered with weapons. They were moving in formation, surrounding the Velen vessel like wolves circling prey. Who are they? Tay asked. Nara's face had gone pale. Even her blue skin looked white. The Dominion, she whispered. They are the oldest empire in this sector, and they have wanted to control the Velen for a very long time. What do they want? Nara turned to look at him, and the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. I think they want you. One of the officers called out from his station. Princess, they are hailing us. They demand that we hand over the human immediately. Tay felt his stomach drop. The hidden enemies. The powers that hunted humans. They were not just ancient history. They were here. Right now. How did they know? He asked. How did they know I was here? Nara shook her head. I do not know. Perhaps they have spies. Perhaps they intercepted your signal. It does not matter now. They are here, and they are not going to leave without you. The officer spoke again. Princess, what should I tell them? Nara straightened her back. The fear was still in her eyes, but something else was there too. Something harder. Something stronger. Tell them that the Velen Empire does not bow to threats. Tell them that this human is under our protection. And tell them that if they want to fight, we will give them one. The officer nodded and began transmitting the message. Around the room, Velen soldiers started preparing for battle. Weapons were checked. Shields were raised. The whole ship came alive with activity. Tay watched all of this happening because of him. Because he existed. Because he had been found. I should surrender, he said. I should give myself up. Then they will leave you alone. Nara grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Do not even think about it. The humans saved us when no one else would. We will not abandon their descendant now. No matter what happens. She looked into his eyes with fierce determination. This is what your ancestors would have done. They would have stood and fought for what was right. And we will do the same for you. The first shots were fired. The battle had begun. For now, you should rest, eat, recover your strength. Tom or Tay could not sleep that night. They had given him a real room with a soft bed and clean sheets and warm light. It was better than anything on his old shuttle, better than his apartment back on the colony station. But every time he closed his eyes, his mind filled with images of ancient humans saving alien civilizations. Who were those people? Where had they come from? And why did no one on Earth remember them? When morning came, or whatever passed for morning on the ship, a guard appeared at his door. The tall alien did not speak, only gestured for Tay to follow. They walked through the curving corridors until they reached the dining hall where Princess Nara was waiting. She sat alone at a long table covered with dishes Tay did not recognize. The food was strange colors, purple and orange and bright green. But it smelled good. His stomach made a loud noise, and he felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. Nara laughed softly. Sit, eat. You must be starving. Tay did not need to be told twice. He sat across from her and started trying the different foods. Some were sweet. Some were salty. A few made his tongue feel like it was on fire. But he ate everything, barely stopping to breathe between bites. Nara watched him with an expression that was hard to read. It was not disgust or amusement. It was something closer to fascination. "You read like someone who's been hungry before," she said. Tay swallowed a mouthful of something that tasted like bread. "I grew up poor. On the colony stations, food is not always easy to get. You learn to eat fast when you have the chance." Nara nodded slowly. "Our ancestors said the same about the humans who saved them. They said your people knew hunger, knew cold, knew suffering. They said it made you stronger, made you understand what others needed." Tay put down his food. "You said you would show me the ancient text today. You said you would tell me what humans really are. I did." Nara stood and gestured for him to follow. "Come, the keepers are waiting." They left the dining hall and traveled deeper into the ship. The corridors here were older, Tay noticed. The walls were rougher. The lights were dimmer. This was not part of the main vessel. This was something else, something that had been added or attached. "This section is called the temple," Nara explained as they walked. "It is where we keep our most sacred objects, our most important memories. Only the royal family and the keepers are allowed to enter." Keepers? Those who protect the old knowledge. Those who remember when everyone else forgets. They reached a massive door made of dark metal. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, symbols that seemed to move and shift when Tay tried to focus on them. Nara placed her hand against the door, and it slid open with a sound like a giant breathing out. Inside was a room that took Tay's breath away. It was circular, like the memory hall, but much smaller. The walls were lined with shelves, and on those shelves were books. Real books made of paper and leather and thread. Tay had not seen physical books since he was a child visiting a museum. Nobody used them anymore. Everything was digital. But these books were clearly ancient. Some of them looked older than anything Tay had ever seen. And sitting among those books were 3 figures. They were Velen, but different from the others Tay had met. They were smaller, thinner, with skin that had turned pale gray instead of blue. Their 4 eyes were clouded and white. They were old, Tay realized. Very, very old. "These are the keepers," Nara said softly. "They have lived for over 800 years. They remember things that happened long before I was born. Long before my grandmother was born." One of the ancient Velen turned its clouded eyes toward Tay. When it spoke, its voice was like dry leaves rustling in wind. "A human. After all this time, we knew you would come. We have been waiting." Tay felt a chill run down his spine. "Waiting? How could you know I would come?" The old keeper made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Because the humans told us. Before they left, they said one of them would return when the time was right. We did not know if it would be 10 years or 10,000, but we knew it would happen." Another keeper reached out and took a book from the shelf. It moved slowly, carefully, like the book might crumble to dust at any moment. It placed the book on a table in the center of the room and opened it to a specific page. "Come," it said. "See what your ancestors were." Tay stepped forward and looked at the page. The words were written in a language he did not recognize, but there were also pictures. Detailed drawings of humans. Men and women in simple clothing, working, building, fighting, healing. And beneath each picture was a symbol he recognized. The blue planet. The circle of stars. The flag of Earth. "Your people called themselves many things," the third keeper said. "Explorers, scientists, travelers. But we called them something else. We called them the Guardians." "Guardians?" "Yes, because that is what they were. They guarded life. Wherever they went, they protected those who could not protect themselves. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. They simply helped." The keeper turned to another page. This one showed a battle. Humans fighting against creatures that looked like nightmares, all teeth and claws and black scales. The humans were outnumbered, outmatched, but they were not running. They were standing their ground. Before they came to us, they helped the Marvani when a plague threatened to destroy their population. Before that, they helped the Centauri when their ships were attacked by raiders. Before that, they helped species we do not even have names for anymore. Everywhere they went, they left behind stories, legends, myths. Tay stared at the pictures. The humans in these drawings looked ordinary. They were not bigger or stronger or smarter than anyone else. They were just people. Normal people doing extraordinary things. But why? He asked. Why would they do all of this? What did they gain? The first keeper made that rustling laugh again. You still do not understand. That is exactly what makes humans special. You do not need a reason to help. You do not calculate the benefit before offering kindness. You simply see suffering and try to end it. This is not common in the galaxy. Most species are selfish. Most species think only of their own survival. But humans are different. Nara stepped forward. The ancient texts describe your people as having something called empathy, the ability to feel what others feel, to understand pain you have never experienced, to care about strangers you will never meet. This trait is rare. Among the thousands of species we have encountered, only a handful possess it, and none possess it as strongly as humans. Tay thought about this. Empathy was not special to him. It was just normal. If he saw someone hurting, he wanted to help. If he saw injustice, he wanted to fix it. Was that really so unusual? There is more, the second keeper said. It turned to another section of the book. Your people were also remarkably resilient. They could survive conditions that would kill most other species. Extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, lack of food and water. They simply adapted and continued. They refused to give up, even when giving up was the logical choice. Another page showed humans working in environments that looked hellish. Burning deserts, frozen wastelands, planets where the air itself was poisonous. In every picture, the humans were surviving, thriving even. This combination, the keeper continued, empathy and resilience is what made humans so valuable. They cared enough to help, and they were strong enough to actually do it. They were not warriors, not in the traditional sense. But they were something more important. They were hope. Tay sat down heavily in a nearby chair. His mind was overflowing with information. Everything he thought he knew about humanity was wrong. They were not small and weak and unimportant. They were legends. They were heroes, but they were also gone. What happened to them? He asked. You said they disappeared. Do you know where they went? The keepers exchanged looks that Tay could not interpret. Finally, the first one spoke. We have theories. Nothing certain. Some records suggest they were called home by their own people. Earth, they called it. Something happened there, something urgent, and they had to return. Other records suggest they went into hiding deliberately, to let the species they had saved learn to stand on their own. But there is a third theory, the third keeper added. A darker one. What theory? The keeper hesitated. When it spoke again, its voice was even quieter than before. Some believe the humans were hunted, that there were powers in the galaxy who saw them as a threat, who feared what they might become if they continued to spread and grow. These powers might have pursued them, attacked them, driven them into the shadows. Tay felt cold. Are those powers still out there? Nara answered before the keepers could. Yes, some of them are. The galaxy is not a safe place. There are empires that have existed for millions of years. They do not like change. They do not like anything that might disturb the order they have built. She knelt beside his chair and took his hands in hers. "This is why your return is so important, Tay. If humans are still alive, if there are more of you out there, the galaxy needs to know. But we must be careful. We must be smart. There are those who would destroy your entire species to prevent you from rising again." Tay looked into her silver eyes. He saw fear there, but also hope. The same hope she had mentioned before. "What do you want me to do?" Nara squeezed his hands. "Help us find the truth. Help us understand what happened." The chamber was completely silent. Every alien in the room was staring at Tay like he had grown a second head. The guards still held their weapons ready, but their hands were not steady anymore. They were afraid. Tay could see it in the way they shifted their weight from foot to foot. Princess Nara stood before him, her silver eyes never leaving his face. The tears were gone now, replaced by something harder, something that looked like determination. "Stand up," she said. Tay hesitated. The guards still had their weapons pointed at him. Moving seemed like a bad idea. Nara turned to the guards and spoke sharply in her own language. Whatever she said, it made them lower their weapons immediately. They stepped back, giving Tay space. "Stand up," she repeated. "I will not ask again." Tay pushed himself to his feet. His legs felt weak, and his knees hurt from pressing against the hard floor. He was tired and hungry and confused. None of this made any sense. Nara walked around him slowly, studying him from every angle. Her eyes moved over his body, like she was examining a piece of ancient art in a museum. She touched his shoulder, his arm, the side of his face. Her fingers were cool against his skin. "Remarkable," she whispered. "You look exactly like the old records." "What records?" Tay asked. "What are you talking about?" "Humans and your people have never met before. We would know. There would be history. There would be stories." Nara stopped in front of him. A small, sad smile crossed her face. "Your people forgot. Or perhaps you never knew. But we remember. We have always remembered." She gestured to one of the guards. The tall alien hurried away and returned a moment later, carrying a small metal box. The princess took it and opened the lid carefully, like whatever was inside might break from rough handling. Inside, the box was a piece of cloth, old, faded. The color might have once been bright, but now it was pale and worn with age. Nara lifted it gently and unfolded it. Tay's heart stopped. It was a flag. A human flag. The design was slightly different from the ones he knew, but there was no mistaking what it was. The blue planet. The circle of stars. The symbol of Earth. "Where did you get that?" His voice came out as a whisper. "It was given to my ancestors," Nara said. 342 years ago. Given by a human captain named Park. He told my people to keep it always. To remember what humans had done for us. Tay's mind was spinning. 342 years ago, humans had barely figured out how to leave their own solar system. The first colony ships were just being built. How could humans have been out here, meeting alien civilizations, giving away flags? "That is not possible," he said. 300 years ago, humans were still learning to travel between stars. We had no contact with anyone. Nara folded the flag carefully and placed it back in the box. When she looked at Tay again, her expression was patient, like a teacher dealing with a confused student. "Come with me," she said. "There is much you need to see, much you need to understand." She turned and walked toward a side door. Tay did not move at first. Every instinct in his body told him to be careful. Every instinct in his ball. This could be a trap. These aliens could be planning something terrible. But what choice did he have? He was alone on their ship, surrounded by beings much larger and stronger than him. If they wanted to hurt him, they could do it any time they wanted. Going with the princess was no more dangerous than staying here. He followed her. The guards fell in behind them, keeping a respectful distance. Tay noticed that they were not pointing their weapons at him anymore. In fact, they seemed almost protective, like they were escorting someone important rather than a prisoner. Nara led him through more curving corridors. The ship was even larger than Tay had imagined. They walked for nearly 10 minutes before reaching their destination. It was a library, or something like a library. The room was circular, with walls that reached up so high they disappeared into shadow. Those walls were covered with shelves, and those shelves were filled with objects that glowed softly with inner light. Thousands of them. Maybe millions. "This is the memory hall," Nara said. "Everything our people have ever learned, everything we have ever experienced, is stored here. This is where we keep our history." She walked to one section of the wall and touched a glowing object. The room suddenly filled with light and color. Images appeared in the air around them, floating like ghosts. Tay watched in amazement as he saw the story unfold. A planet. Blue and green and beautiful, like Earth. This was the old Velen homeworld, he realized. The place where Nara's people had been born. But something was wrong. The sky was dark. The oceans were dying. Great cracks appeared in the ground, releasing clouds of poisonous gas. The Velen people were running, screaming, dying by the millions. "The Great Collapse," Nara said quietly. "Our sun was dying. It was releasing waves of radiation that destroyed everything on our world. We did not have the technology to escape. We were going to become extinct." The images changed. Ships appeared in the sky above the dying planet. Small ships. Ugly ships. Human ships. Tay recognized the design. These were early colony vessels, the kind used by the first human explorers. They were not fast or powerful or impressive. They were just metal boxes with engines attached, but there were thousands of them. "They came from nowhere," Nara continued. "We had never seen beings like them before. Small, soft, fragile. We thought they were going to take advantage of our weakness. We thought they were going to enslave us or destroy us." The images showed humans stepping out of their ships. They wore simple suits, nothing like the advanced armor of the Velen guards. They carried tools, not weapons. They started building things: shelters, water systems, medical stations. "They saved us," Nara said, and her voice broke slightly. "They asked for nothing in return. They just helped. They moved our entire population off that dying world. 3 billion Velen. It took them 50 years. They never stopped. They never gave up." Tay watched humans and Velen working together, building new ships, finding new planets, creating a new home for the dying species. The humans looked tired. Many of them looked sick. But they kept working. Why? Tay asked. Why would they do that? Nara turned to face him. Her silver eyes were wet again. We asked them the same question. Do you know what they said? Tay shook his head. They said, because you needed help. That was all. No complicated reasons. No demands for payment. They simply saw people suffering and decided to do something about it. The images changed again. This time, they showed celebrations. Velen and humans dancing together, eating together, laughing together. Two species that had been strangers becoming friends, becoming family. But then the images grew darker. The human ships began to leave. One by one, they disappeared into the stars. The humans said goodbye, promising to return, promising to stay in contact. But they never came back. We tried to find them, Nara said. We sent ships to follow their trail. We searched for decades. But they were gone, vanished, like they had never existed at all. Theories spread through the galaxy. Some said the humans had been destroyed by their own sun, the same way ours had almost destroyed us. Others said they had traveled too far and gotten lost in the dark between galaxies. A few believed they had simply decided to hide, to watch from a distance without interfering. She stepped closer to Tay. Eventually, most species forgot about humans entirely. They became myths, legends, stories that parents told their children. But the Velen never forgot. We could not forget. Your people gave us everything. They gave us our future. Tay stood in silence, trying to process everything he had just learned. 300 years ago, humans had saved an entire alien civilization. They had sacrificed decades of their lives to help strangers. And then they had disappeared. But that did not match anything Tay knew about human history. Earth had records going back thousands of years. There was no mention of contact with aliens. No mention of saving anyone. No mention of any of this. "I do not understand," he finally said. "If this happened, why do we not remember? Why is there no record of this on Earth?" Nara shook her head. "I do not know. Perhaps the ones who came to us were a separate group. Perhaps they were explorers who traveled too far and lost contact with your homeworld. Perhaps the information was deliberately hidden. But the truth remains. Your people saved us. And now, after all this time, you have returned." She reached out and took his hand. Her grip was gentle but firm. "When I saw you in that chamber, I recognized what you were immediately. The shape of your body, the structure of your face, the color of your skin. You are exactly like the humans from our records. And when I realized what you were, I felt something I have not felt in many years." "What?" Tay asked. "Hope," Nara said. "Hope that the galaxy might finally know the truth about what humanity really is." She released his hand and stepped back. Her expression became serious again. "But I must warn you," she said. "Not everyone will welcome this news. The galaxy has changed since your people disappeared. There are empires and powers that might see the return of humans as a threat. There are those who might try to destroy you before you can become strong again." Tay swallowed hard. He had come to this ship expecting to die alone in space. Now he was learning that his entire species had a secret history, and that history might put everyone he knew in danger. "What should I do?" he asked. Nara smiled. It was a real smile this time, warm and full of genuine affection. The stars outside the small window looked cold and far away. Tay pressed his hand against the glass and felt nothing but the chill of space bleeding through. His shuttle had been drifting for 3 days now. The engine was dead. The food was almost gone. The water would last maybe 2 more days if he was careful. He was going to die out here. He knew this. He had accepted this. Tay was 28 years old. He had been a cargo pilot for a small mining company back on the colony station. Nothing special. Nothing important. Just a man who moved boxes from one place to another. And now he was going to become another piece of floating garbage in the endless dark. Between stars, he laughed quietly to himself. It was not a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh a person makes when they have run out of tears and screaming seems pointless. The emergency beacon had been blinking for 3 days. Nobody answered. Nobody came. The shipping lane he had been traveling was rarely used. It could be months before another ship passed through this section of space. Months after his body had already turned cold. Tay closed his eyes and leaned back in his pilot seat. The leather was cracked and old. The whole shuttle was old. The company never spent money on proper equipment. That was why the engine had failed in the first place. He thought about his mother back on the colony. She would wait for his message that would never come. She would worry. She would cry. Eventually, she would accept that her son was gone. Tay hated that he could not even say goodbye. Sleep was pulling at him. The cold was making him tired. Maybe if he just closed his eyes for a while, everything would be easier. Maybe he would simply drift away in his dreams and never wake up. That did not sound so bad. Then the shuttle shook. Tay's eyes opened fast. His heart jumped in his chest. The ship was moving, but not from its own power. Something was pulling it. Something big. He scrambled to the window and pressed his face against the glass. What he saw made his breath stop completely. A ship. No, not a ship. A mountain with engines. The thing was so large that Tay could not see where it began or where it ended. It stretched across the darkness like a sleeping god. Lights blinked along its surface in patterns he did not recognize. The metal was dark purple, almost black, and it seemed to swallow the starlight around it. This was not a human ship. Tay had never seen anything like this. Humans had only been traveling between stars for about 200 years. Their ships were practical and ugly. This thing was beautiful in a terrifying way. A beam of blue light wrapped around his shuttle. He was being pulled toward an opening in the side of the giant vessel. A docking bay, he realized. They were bringing him inside. Tay did not know if he should feel relieved or afraid. Aliens. He was about to meet aliens. Humanity had found signs of other intelligent life before, but actual contact was rare. Most species ignored humans or avoided them. Humans were new to the galaxy, small, unimportant. The shuttle passed through a shimmering barrier and suddenly, there was gravity again. His small ship landed with a gentle thump on a metal floor. Through the window, Tay could see figures moving toward him. Tall figures. Very tall. He took a deep breath. Whatever happened next, it had to be better than dying alone in the dark. The shuttle door opened with a hiss. Tay had not opened it. They had done it from outside. He stood up slowly, raising his hands to show he had no weapons. His heart was beating so hard he could hear it in his ears. The first alien stepped into view, and Tay felt his legs go weak. It was humanoid, but taller than any human he had ever seen. 8 feet at least. Its skin was pale blue, smooth like polished stone. It had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face, all of them black and shiny like wet glass. It wore armor that looked like it was grown rather than made, all curves and organic shapes. In its hands was a weapon that glowed with soft orange light. More of them appeared behind the first. 5, 10, 20. They surrounded his shuttle. Their weapons all pointed at him. Tay kept his hands up. His mouth was dry. He tried to speak, but no words came out. One of the aliens barked something in a language full of clicks and humming sounds. Tay shook his head to show he did not understand. The alien made a gesture, and 2 guards stepped forward. They grabbed Tay by the arms and pulled him out of the shuttle. He did not resist. What was the point? They were twice his size, and there were dozens of them. Fighting would only get him killed faster. They marched him through corridors that curved and twisted like the inside of a living creature. The walls were smooth and warm to the touch. The light came from everywhere and nowhere. Tay felt like he had been swallowed by some giant beast. Finally, they entered a large chamber. The ceiling was so high that Tay could barely see it. In the center of the room was a raised platform, and on that platform was a chair that looked like a throne. The guards pushed Tay to his knees and held him there. He waited. Minutes passed. Sweat ran down his face, even though the air was cool. Then a door opened at the far end of the chamber, and she walked in. Tay knew immediately that she was different from the others. She was smaller, closer to human height, maybe 6 feet tall. Her skin was the same pale blue, but it seemed to glow slightly from within. She had only 2 eyes, large and silver like mirrors. Her hair, if it could be called hair, was long and white, flowing behind her like smoke. She wore robes of deep purple and gold instead of armor. A thin crown of silver metal rested on her head. Everything about her spoke of power and importance. This was someone who mattered. A leader, maybe a queen or a princess. She walked toward him with slow, graceful steps. The guards bowed their heads as she passed. The room was completely silent, except for the soft sound of her feet on the floor. Tay kept his head down. He did not know the customs of these people. He did not want to offend them by looking when he should not. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could have reached out and touched the hem of her robe. And then he looked up. Their eyes met. What happened next was something Tay would remember for the rest of his life. The princess stiffened. Her whole body went rigid, like someone had frozen her in place. Her silver eyes went wide, wider than seemed possible. Her mouth opened slightly, and a small sound escaped her lips. It was not a word. It was something between a gasp and a cry. She took a step backward, then another. The guards reacted immediately. They raised their weapons and pointed them at Tay's head. They thought he had done something. They thought he had attacked her somehow. But the princess raised her hand, and they stopped. She was staring at Tay like he was a ghost, like he was something from a nightmare or a dream. Her hand was trembling. Her whole body was trembling. She spoke one word in her language, and even though Tay did not understand it, he could hear the fear in her voice. He could hear the shock. He could hear something else too. One of the guards spoke to her quickly, urgently. The princess did not respond. She simply kept staring at Tay with those mirror-like eyes. Finally, she spoke again. This time, her words were different, slower, rougher, like she was struggling to remember something she had not used in a long time. You are human. Tay felt cold run through his entire body. She knew what he was. But how? Humans were nobodies in this galaxy. They were small and weak and new. Why would this alien princess know about his species? Why would she react like this? He nodded slowly. Yes, I am human. The princess closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet with what might have been tears. We thought you were all dead, she whispered. We thought your kind was gone forever. Tay's heart was pounding. His mind was racing. What was she talking about? Humanity was not dead. Earth was still there. The colonies were still there. Millions of humans were living their lives across a dozen star systems. But something in her voice told him that she was not talking about the present. She was talking about the past, a past that Tay knew nothing about. Who are you? He asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. The princess straightened her back. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger. I am Nara, she said, third princess of the Velen Empire. And you, human, have no idea what you are.